Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It's official. Franchon Crews versus Zhang mandatory fight has been ordered by the WBC. The same WBC that has yet to order Jermall Charlo to fight Carlos Adames.
How convenient.
Zhang is determined to bring a second undisputed championship to Most Valuable Promotions family, one of their most recent signees. At the very least, the unbeaten knockout artist is positioned to ruin big plans for several other parties. BoxingScene.com has learned that WBC has ordered a mandatory title fight between undisputed super middleweight queen Franchon Crews and Green as her number one ranked challenger. The two sides have until April 28th, the end of this month, to reach a deal and avoid a purse bid hearing, as first reported by ESPN's Michael Rothenstein's. Baltimore's Crews-Dezurn is represented in talks by Peter Khan, the 2022 BWAA Manager of the Year. Green signed with MVP, co-founded by Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian, prior to February 4th, six-round knockout of former unified titleist Oleksandr to become the WBC's mandatory challenger. Crews-Dezurn won the WBC super middleweight title in a September 2013 majority decision win over Marisela Cornejo. Their September 2019 rematch saw Crews-Dezurn win in more convincing fashion, which also came with the vacant WBO title at stake. She was originally due to face Mexico's Alejandra Jimenez, who was injured and had to delay their fight by 4 months.
They ended up fighting 2 times, and that's how Franchon ended up beating Marisela 2 times.
Zhang is a credible and apparent threat to most anyone and everyone at or around 160 to 168 pounds. She's dangerous.
She's dangerous. More dangerous even, I'd say, than Alejandra Jimenez.
Jimenez, who initially claimed a split decision win in their rescheduled January 2020 clash, but the verdict was overturned after it was learned that she tested positive for a banned substance,
Stanozol.
Crews-Dezurn had to wait out a lengthy review process with both the WBO and the WBC before having her title reign fully restored. 2 fights later, Crews-Dezurn became undisputed following a lopsided win over the previously unbeaten Oleksandr, who lost the IBF and WBA titles in their undisputed championship clash.
It was on the undercard of Taylor versus Serrano, and Oleksandr just so happens to be a common opponent between them. A common opponent between Franchon and Zhang.
And if you saw those fights, you'd know that, yeah, Franchon definitely put a lopsided beating on Oleksandr. She did. But she didn't floor her like Zhang. I mean, both fighters beat Oleksandr in one-sided fashion, but Zhang, she actually stopped her.
Stopped her in the 6th round in a fight that was scheduled for 10.
Oleksandr was able to weather some really heavy shots, some heavy overhand rights from Franchon Crews for 10 rounds. She couldn't make it out the 6th with Zhang. And I understand that boxing math, triangle theories, they don't work. But at minimum, what that communicates is that Zhang is a more heavy-handed puncher than Franchon Crews. Ultimately, styles as they say, they make fights. That's what decides how a fight is going to look and how a fight's going to end. And based on the styles, Franchon may be at a severe disadvantage opposite the ring a counterpuncher, a heavy-handed one like Zhang.
Up until this point, what we've seen from Franchon consistently, fight by fight, is good old pressure fighting. She's a mid-range to inside combination puncher that overwhelms her opponents with volume.
Very recently, on the undercard of Serrano versus Crews, the undisputed featherweight title fight, on the undercard of that fight, we saw what Zhang did to Oleksandr.
Oleksandr tried to fluster her, tried to crowd her, tried to get in her wheelhouse and overwhelm her with size, aggression, and volume. That didn't work out.
The more punches that Oleksandr put together, the more opportunities she gave Zhang to roll those punches off the shoulder and come over with counter shots, big ones.
Against the counterpuncher, you don't want to get froggy. Against the counterpuncher, you've got to be economic, you've got to box. You've got to deprive them of opportunities to counter what you're throwing at them.
And at least up until this point, we haven't seen Franchon Crews be that economic pure boxer. She's been quite the opposite. She's been a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, volume puncher. If she stays in character with Zhang, that could backfire.
And things could go wrong.
BoxingScene.com has learned that talks were, and possibly still are, in place for Crews-Dezurn to defend her fully unified championship versus England's Savannah Marshall, a former WBO middleweight titleist. Crews-Dezurn was ringside for Marshall's competitive but clear points loss to pound-for-pound queen Clarissa Shields in their undisputed middleweight championship last October 15th in London.
Now here's the thing. For Franchon, defending those belts against Zhang don't represent the same financial value as defending them against Savannah Marshall, because Zhang, while she might be with most valuable promotions,
She doesn't have an entire platform behind her. Savannah Marshall does. She's with Sky Sports.
if you're French on Crews, you'd likely prefer to take on Savannah instead of Zhang because fighting Savannah gets you more money.
Sky Sports would likely bill that as a main event, a headliner. French on Crews versus Savannah Marshall, whereas even if most valuable promotions decided to bankroll Crews versus Green, it'd likely be on an undercard.
I want to say that Most Valuable Promotions is a great outfit, a new one in the sport of boxing, but they haven't yet formed a partnership with a platform like, say, an ESPN or a DAZN that would help them bankroll fights that they themselves promote.
That's saying that MVP is not right here and now where Boxer is with, say, Sky Sports. Sky Sports gives them a lot of money. They do shows.
So there's two ways that this might break down. Zhang Green might decide to stick to her guns and challenge French on straight away because she wants her title shot now. She might do that.
That's one scenario. And in that scenario, I'm not sure who's going to do the fight and on what platform it would appear.
But that's one.
Two. The people over there at Boxer and Sky Sports pay Zhang Green to step aside on the premise that she'll challenge the winner of French on Crews versus Savannah Marshall.
That's two. That's scenario number two.
Number three, which is a separate scenario, French on Crews, knowing that the Marshall fight gets her more money, might decide to chuck the WBC title in the air, hand it over to Zhang, and go through with the fight with Savannah on the premise that she'll still be bringing 3 belts to the table.
The fight with Savannah will still be a unified title fight.
She'll still go into it the champion, and she'll still be able to make a big price, make a big payday, because the Zhang Green fight jeopardizes the Marshall fight. Zhang is dangerous.
Basically, 3 ways this could all break down.
What is more valuable to Zhang as an up-and-comer is the fight itself, not just the belt, not just the WBC title.
But actually getting to fight for it on a major platform. So we're going to see how Zhang and MVP, we're going to see how they play this.
Men's heavyweight news ahead of this weekend's WBO interim title fight. Zhang looks forward to testing the chin of Joyce. Joe, who's fast amassed a reputation for having a cast iron jaw, taking some heavy shots in previous outings. Joyce has good punch resistance, but he has never felt Chinese power, is the chilling warning coming from the 39-year-old who hails from Zuku in China.
Do I think Zhang is the biggest puncher Joyce will have faced so far?
Perhaps yes, perhaps I do. Bryant Jennings, who Joyce faced some time ago. Bryant is a skilled mover, stick and move guy, but he's not known for power.
And he never was.
You can fucking forget about the version of Crews-Dezurn that Joyce fought. That guy's not a big puncher either.
And he was old.
Carlos Takam, a crafty fighter, a pesky one. Nobody ever looks good against Carlos Takam, but Carlos isn't known as a big puncher.
He's durable, he's crafty, he's smart. But he ain't known as no knockout merchant. He's not known as a big puncher.
Then unbeaten Daniel Dubois, who many favored to beat Joyce
I did.
in their outing ahead of it. I myself picked Daniel Dubois to win that fight, and I was wrong.
Joe won.
Do I think that Daniel Dubois is as big a puncher as Zhang? Here's what I think. I think their power is actually comparable, but I think that Zhang is a better boxer, fundamentally.
Remember, he's got the amateur background that Daniel Dubois doesn't have.
So even if in terms of power, you might say that they're comparable, I still feel like Zhang, given his amateur background and the fact that he's a southpaw.
He might actually pose a greater threat to Joe than Daniel did. He might.
We'll see. Joseph Parker, what is Joyce's signature victory, his signature win, having been the first heavyweight to stop the former WBO champion. Joe's not a big puncher.
He's got some finer qualities, but power and aggression are not among them.
So maybe Zhang is a bigger threat to Joe than that guy. Joyce, who says it's annoying that Dubois and Hrgovic are ahead of me in the world title queue.
It is true. Joyce has a better resume than the both of those guys, but the both of them are ahead of the line, ahead of the queue to face Oleksandr Usyk.
Even though Joe has a better resume than the both of those guys, it's annoying. Joyce told Sky Sports, it's really annoying that Dubois is ahead in the queue and Hrgovic as well. It's out of my control and unfortunate, but fortunate for Dubois to come off a devastating loss to me and then be before me in the selection for the unified title shot. Only in boxing would this stuff happen. Nothing really surprises me. I'm just patient and I'll get my shot. If I just keep on beating these guys, then I'll get the world title. I'm in a good position. position, and it's exciting times. There are plenty of good fights out there. I will get there eventually. I'm right there, so it's just a matter of time. I've got confidence in my ability, and I do deliver when I fight. It's going to be quite hard stopping me.
Think about Joe Joyce's resume. A former champion in Crews-Dezurn, a former champion in Joseph Parker, an unbeaten up-and-comer in Daniel Dubois,
A world title challenger, seasoned journeyman in Bryant Jennings, and a more seasoned journeyman in Carlos Takam. He's got a better resume than both Daniel Dubois and Filip Hrgovic, but they're ahead of him in the queue.
That's based on the rotation, though.
Based on the rotation of belts, the rotation of mandatory challengers for unified champion Oleksandr Usyk. That explains it.
But the perception still remains that Joe Joyce, having amassed the body of work that he has so far, he really does have a better resume than both Daniel Dubois and Filip Hrgovic. So at least on merit, he does seem to deserve the shot more than they do, but he's last in the totem pole.
That he actually gave Daniel Dubois his first professional loss, and it ends up that Daniel ends up ahead of him in the queue. Surely there's something to be said about that. The saving grace is that Joe Joyce may not have to wait for Usyk to get a title shot.
He said a Fury fight would be easy to set up. We're both with Frank Warren.
That is an idea that's been bounced around the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Fury's not fighting Usyk for undisputed, but he's got to fight somebody, right? He hasn't retired.
Right.
Yeah, I'm ready to step in. I'm scheduled to fight Zhang first. That's a massive fight, so I'll do that first. Fury said he wanted to face me if he didn't fight Usyk. Of course, I've got to beat Zhang first, Joyce told Daily Mail. It would be very easy to set up. We're both with Frank Warren. He's already said he wants to fight me. It's a great fight. People are interested in seeing that fight.
It's an in-house situation that doesn't require any outside promoters, any outside platforms. At least in theory, Fury versus Joyce should be easy to make. But then again, in theory, Fury versus Usyk was supposed to be easy to make.
Oleksandr Usyk, Alexander Krassyuk, Igor Klimas, these guys have got a reputation for being no-nonsense customers that are easy to work with. They're not prima donnas, they're not drama queens, and yet the Fury fight still fell apart.
So even if in theory, Fury versus Joyce is supposed to be an easy fight to make, when is it ever easy to work with Tyson Fury?
Next to never. It wasn't easy for Wilder, it wasn't easy for Anthony Joshua, it wasn't easy for Oleksandr Usyk. Will it be easy for Joe Joyce? I suppose the opposing argument is that Fury's got to fight somebody. If you're not offering up undisputed, what's the next best fight? What's the next best thing?
Don't say Anthony Joshua, because he just said by way of his social media he's not coming back till December. So what's Fury going to do in June? What's he going to do in July? August?
He's going to sit out all of spring, all of summer, most of fall.
That's the opposing argument. Fury did say that he wants to fight Joe Joyce if things don't work out with Usyk. Then again, you can't really go by things Fury says.
No.
Since he changes his mind.
He's a flip-flopper. You can't go by anything he says, even if he did say he's willing to fight Joyce. That's a story that only time can tell.
First order of business for Smokin' Joe is beating Zhang, making it past that guy this weekend.
And as stated, I think Zhang can provide a decent-sized challenge. He's got a decent-sized punch, and he is a southpaw that comes from a very similar amateur background to Joe Joyce.
I like Joe to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if Zhang floors Joe the same way that he floored Filip Hrgovic. I could see that happening.
Joe didn't get a reputation for having a cast-iron jaw because of how great his defense is. Quite the opposite.
That's saying that I still like Joe Joyce to win the fight, but I wouldn't be surprised if he looks a little bit more human with Zhang.
We'll see what happens. Just in keeping with the theme of all things heavyweight, some parting thoughts from Oleksandr Usyk on the heels of the Fury fight's collapse. According to Usyk, he eventually grew tired of the entire process dragging on and decided to walk away. I'm very happy, by the way. Even though it sounds weird, I'm very happy that this fight is not happening and I am going home. You've got to understand me. I trained for 3 months straight. Usyk explained to Vladimir Kobalkov, according to the Mirror. Then I get to come back home and spend time with my children and just enjoy myself. It was supposed to happen. God tells me this was supposed to happen. I see that nothing is happening. He's trying to play with us, and I told him, that's it, goodbye. He wants to copy Muhammad Ali, but it's a bad copy.
Usyk wasn't going to let Fury waste any more of his time, and in truth, Usyk's not the one that has to save face here. Usyk's not the one that has to convince anyone of anything, because if you take an independent poll right now,
check the weather. Any social media platform you conduct an independent poll on asking who's responsible for the collapse of this fight, it's going to come back Fury. It's going to come back Tyson Fury every single time on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook.
Anywhere you do it, anywhere you look.
It's not a difficult situation to understand or a difficult situation to surmise. They already costed Oleksandr Usyk millions fumbling the bag in Saudi. They get the fight over to the UK and lowball the guy, and he's actually willing to take the lowball. He's actually willing to take the 70-30 split so long as Tyson Fury's willing to accept that in reverse. Should Usyk win the first fight, and by all rights, that shouldn't have bothered Tyson Fury if he were confident that he were going to win the first fight, because then it wouldn't matter.
Usyk only wanted 70-30 in the event that he wins the first fight, but if you're Fury and you're confident that you can beat this guy, you can run this middleweight over.
That scenario shouldn't even come into it, because you figure you're going to beat him. He's not going to get 70-30 in a second fight if there even is a second fight. That's if you're confident, but Fury...
Check the weather. Ask around. People don't think Fury was confident.
Getting the fight over to the UK after fumbling the bag in Saudi, then lowballing the guy. After the guy accepts the lowball, then you propose that there be no rematch clause.
In a nutshell, he kept moving the goalpost, and Usyk had finally had enough. He realized, this guy's got no intention of fighting, so let's not waste any more time on this.
We've got several mandatory challengers in the queue, so let's just move on to that. Let's see what happens. And you'll still find the odd guy out there, the odd guy that's willing to defend Tyson Fury, because at this point in the juncture, it's not about Usyk having to explain himself.
No.
It's not about Usyk having to save face. It's about Fury.
He's the one who's got to redeem himself. He's the one who has to save face, and it's his fans that do most of the arguing.
Arguing in his defense, trying to convince me and you that we shouldn't blame him.
Even though most people do, but that's why they do it, because most people do.
Check the weather. Ask around. Take a poll.
What remains of Tyson Fury's maligned cult of idiots who go for whatever he says, they think it's at all cute or charming that he wastes people's time or tries to.
Cockamamie arguments that are often made in his defense. You're not convincing me or anyone else of what you're saying.
People are still going to blame Fury. You're still going to be upset about it.
You're going to keep trying to convince people it's not his fault.
Failed to convince anyone in the process.
I only wonder now how the negotiations between Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois are going to go. Fight with Daniel Dubois, it doesn't get Oleksandr Usyk anywhere near what he stood to get with Tyson Fury. Does the fight end up going to a purse bid?
Can Frank offer this guy the right money, get these guys to reach a deal, or does he fail to do so and the fight ends up going to purse bid? Because if it does, Eddie Hearn can swoop in with that Matchroom in DAZN wallet and poach this fight from under Frank's nose.
He's not the only one. Ben Shalom and Sky, Boxer, they can do the same thing. If it goes to purse bid, it's in the open market. Anybody who wants it is free to bid on it.
I don't think Frank would like the idea of his guy getting slapped up on somebody else's platform.
But that could happen.